Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program, Mom. Zev Brenner. He's been with us before. Shabbos Kestenbaum. He is a theology student, divinity student at Harvard, and he testified in Washington for the Education, the Workforce Committee Chairwoman Virginia Fox's bipartisan roundtable last week with Jewish students from Harvard, U of P, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Columbia University of California, Berkeley, Rutgers, Stanford, Tulane, and Cooper Union about their experience with anti-Semitism on campus. Shabbos, welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here. I'll add that there are not many shows that I would come on at 1 a.m., but for the Zev Brenner talk show, I make an exception.
Really appreciate that, so thank you. So what's going on at Harvard? Before we get to your trip to Washington, what's it like? Has the things abated? Is it as bad? Talk to us. What are you experiencing?
I would say, to put it mildly, it's just as bad. And if I really wanted to get pessimistic, I'd say it's worse. The only thing that's really changed is the public's attention to this story. With Claudine Gay gone, it hasn't really captivated the national attention that it once did, but that doesn't mean the problems have gone away. I think something that really animates that or enforces this idea is the fact that the new president or interim president, Alan Garber, he spoke at the Jewish Student Association of Harvard Business School about a month ago, which is the annual Shabbat dinner, and it's a big deal, and you have hundreds of people, and everyone was hyping up what's he going to say, because this is really his first major address to the Jewish community of Harvard. And he gives this awful 3-minute speech on Tikkun Olam and have a great Shabbos. And we need leadership, and we need action, and we need a president who's going to tell us exactly what they're going to do to combat anti-Semitism, to enforce the policies at our school, to enforce federal law. And he's MIA. The Anti-Semitism Task Force is useless and accomplishes nothing. Meanwhile, we have Harvard faculty and Harvard professors who are promoting on their own social media blatantly anti-Semitic cartoons. And there's just no more accountability anymore.
Talk to us about that cartoon, because that got some attention. What did the cartoon portray?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say it got attention because students like myself demanded that CNN and Fox News pick it up, because we knew that Harvard would not talk about it, Harvard would not condemn it if there was not outside public pressure, which is a pretty damning indictment of the state of higher education, that in order for there to be action, we have to go to these outside media sources to help us. So in terms of the cartoon itself, there was a group formed after October 7th called Faculty and Staff and Faculty for Justice in Palestine, an unrecognized group that was formed after October 7th, and they posted, this is about 3 weeks ago, a blatantly anti-Semitic cartoon that was first popularized in apartheid South Africa that showed a Jewish person replete with the money symbol and a Star of David hanging by the neck, a black man and an Arab man with a noose. And the cartoon that they deliberately chose and that they deliberately posted on their social media included the captions that Zionism is racism and Zionism is, global imperialism and all this garbage, old anti-Semitic tropes. And again, because this received public outrage, Harvard was forced to condemn it, but actions speak louder than words. The professors who publicly and proudly posted this anti-Semitic cartoon are still teaching. They're still organizing lectures like the one this last week called Decolonizing Zionism it was called Decolonizing Zionism and the Ongoing Nakba, which academically just makes no sense, but more fundamentally is pretty shocking that professors who can promote anti-Semitism are also allowed to continue to spew their poison with an official Harvard position. So there's been no action. It's incredibly frustrating, and we're screaming at the top of our lungs and nothing gets done.
Did you initiate, I believe you initiated a lawsuit or in the process of doing so, correct?
Yeah, so we filed a lawsuit in January. And I encourage all of your listeners to read the lawsuit. Just Google Kasowitz Harvard lawsuit, and you'll find it as the top result. And we really want to make some addendums to this lawsuit because there's been a whole host of anti-Semitism since that lawsuit was filed. We actually have students who are interested in being added as plaintiffs because It has not abated. It has not gone away. It's really just gotten worse. And as I said, and I'll keep repeating, we have sort of run out of options here. We don't know what else to do other than just to resort to outside political pressure, which again is such a searing indictment of the state of higher education and the state of Harvard University, that the only way in which Jewish students can receive justice is hoping that Bill Ackman retweets us. The safety of Jewish students at Harvard should not be dependent on who retweets us. It should be dependent on the fact that our university itself takes our concerns seriously. And it is absurd that 120 Harvard faculty and staff can promote blatant anti-Semitism and there not be a single repercussion.
Have you reached out to groups such as the ADL, for example?
Yep. I've reached out to anyone and everyone. So the ADL has been helpful. They want to send resources. I mean, I don't know exactly what that means, but yes, they've been sympathetic. In my trip to DC, which we'll talk about later, I met with Jonathan Greenblatt and I met with staff at the ADL. There are outside Jewish groups that are incredibly sympathetic, but at the end of the day, we need action from Harvard. And it's quite clear that the only way that they will be moved to act is through this lawsuit and or through political pressure by the United States Congress.
Now, you mentioned about the faculty and staff members. I believe you mentioned 120 of them have had this anti-Semitic, anti-Israel conferences and are hostile. Are there Jewish professors on campus that are sympathetic, that are helping you and fellow students who are facing this discrimination, facing this anti-Semitism?
I can think of two. I'm not going to say their names, but I can think of two who've been sympathetic. They're both on the Anti-Semitism task force. But number one, two is not a hell of a lot, considering just how many faculty there are, and Jewish faculty there are. There are actually very prominent Jewish faculty who could be doing more with their platform to help Jewish students. And for whatever reason, they've decided that they are either unable or unwilling. And then the two faculty that I'm thinking of who are on this anti-Semitism task force, I appreciate their concern, but at the same time, in my opinion, they are giving a stamp of approval to a charade. And that charade, this anti-Semitism task force, is a way for Harvard to absolve themselves of the moral and ethical responsibility to combat anti-Semitism. Because now, instead of taking action, they could say, well, we have a task force. The task force is not going to accomplish anything. And in fact, its co-chair just resigned, and she resigned because she said the president, Alan Garber, made it very clear that he takes any of our recommendations as that, as recommendations, as suggestions, but he has not committed himself to actually implementing anything we come up with. And he even said, Alan Garber, he even said that this is something that's going to take months, if not years. We don't have months and we don't have years. We need action. We need it yesterday. It's pretty damn obvious what needs to happen. You don't need to have a PhD to figure out that there's blatant Jew hatred on Harvard's campus. And it's frankly stunning that Jewish students are not given the same level of respect and concern that any other minority group at Harvard has been given in the past.
See, what's the shame is that you don't have a couple of faculty members who are willing to go to bat and go to the administration and say, we represent the Jewish students, we represent other faculty, and intervene. So now, as you said, so Harvard decided they're going to have this task force so they can say, we've done all we can. We have to wait for the results before we do anything. We can't do anything. Our hands are tied, right? That's what they're saying. But there's nobody to interject on your behalf of the students I'm referring to, from the faculty or other people on campus that have power. So really just the students, and the students, they placate by this commission.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it out loud, I would say Rabbi Hershey Zarki of Harvard Chabad has been just absolutely extraordinary. He's been a real voice for the students and a powerful voice. He's not afraid to criticize. And that's what we need. We need people to criticize, and because that's the only way that Harvard will act. But yeah, if you look at Columbia University, they have a professor, Professor Shai Davidi, who's been just absolutely incredible. Jewish students know that they can turn to him, and he is a powerful advocate for their needs, and he has a large platform. And there are many, many Harvard faculty who have similarly large platforms, but they're not using it to advocate for Jewish students. So we're sort of at a crossroads here. I don't know what else we can do.
How many Jewish professors would you say, or faculty members, are there at Harvard? Any idea?
I can speculate. It's at least a couple of hundred, but
At least a
I
couple hundred.
yeah,
And you're
for
telling
sure.
me that not one is willing to go to bat for Jewish students, take a public role and
I'll,
fight for them.
I'll put it this way: I'd be happy to be proven wrong, you know. But from what I understand, from what I've seen, and from what I've experienced, we do not have an equivalent to someone like Shai Davidi. We do not have a current Harvard faculty member or professor who is publicly and loudly saying that Harvard is complicit in Jew hatred, that Harvard is not standing up for the needs of its Jewish students, and that Harvard has a clear anti-Semitism problem. I have not seen that in the 5 months that I've been doing this crap. I don't want to be doing this. I want to be in class. I want to be in school. I want to be pursuing my research. But the past 5 months has just been this constant battle for the most basic of protection. And as I said, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm happy for there to be a Harvard professor who calls me up after this and say, hey, I saw what you said on Zev Brenner, and what are you talking about? Because I've been with you guys for day one. I hope that does happen, but so far I haven't seen it.
I'm not sure if it's going to happen. I wish it would. What about going to people who were professors or faculty members in previous years that are not there now? Anybody that you can count on that maybe good or bad knows the machinations of power and could maybe have some influence?
Yeah, so there is one. Again, I'm not comfortable sharing the name because I don't know if he would want to be named, but there is one who he does teach, but I don't actually think he's officially on the staff anymore. But for those at Harvard who are in the world of Jewish studies, we all know him, and he's great. Harvard has tried pushing him out for years now. He's older, so it's sort of end of an era, but he's been really happy to help our cause, and he's been really excited about this lawsuit. But as I said, he unfortunately doesn't really involve him. He's not really involved with the faculty anymore, just because he's been sort of pushed out, and he's of a different generation. But in terms of previous faculty, I guess Alan Dershowitz, but that's been because he's been doing this for years anyways.
Now, let me ask you this. You are a divinity student at Harvard. From what I recall from the last time we had a conversation on air, I think it's worse at the divinity school than at the law school. My son-in-law's at the, full disclosure, at the law school. My daughter's getting a PhD at Harvard, but it's worse at the divinity school. So describe what you're going through and other Jewish students are facing in Harvard, but I'm particularly interested in where you are.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was applying to Harvard Divinity School 2 years ago, I reached out to different people, to rabbis, to educators, people who had gone to divinity schools, and there was not a single person who recommended that I go to Harvard Divinity School. And it essentially had to do with the fact that the academically wasn't very strong, but more fundamentally, it never could conceive of itself as accommodating to an Orthodox Jew. And I was very insistent that I'm somehow different and I can make it work and I can be a positive voice for change. But there was not one who said that I should go to Harvard Divinity School. A Harvard Divinity School has a profound, in its ethos, it is profoundly hypocritical. And I'll give you a great example. They define themselves on their religious pluralism and their tolerance and they don't call it DEI, they call it diversity, inclusion, and belonging, DIB. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. I'm the only Orthodox Jew there. I'm one of like 3 pro-Israel voices. And at a school that prides itself on religious tolerance, there's no kosher food. At a school that prides itself on including all voices, I was kicked out of all the student WhatsApp groups for arguing that a protest for ceasefires should also include the fact that there are Jewish hostages. So Harvard Divinity School students didn't like that I was saying that, so they kicked me all out. I have emailed the Harvard Divinity School dean. I've emailed the Harvard Divinity School diversity, equity, inclusion officers. I've emailed the Harvard Divinity School Office of Student Life, anyone and everyone, talking about students who are engaged in vicious anti-Semitism. So for example, a Harvard Divinity School student who just recently published a whole article praising Palestinian terrorism. The fact that, as I said, I was kicked out of all of these WhatsApp groups. The fact that there's no kosher food. The fact that there's not a single professor who represents mainstream Jewry. The fact that there's the Religion and Public Life Department, which promotes these old, tired anti-Semitic stereotypes of Jews and the state of Israel being genocidal, being apartheid, being racist. I haven't received, to this date, a single commitment on any of the people I just named that they're going to protect Jewish students and that they're going to promote serious religious pluralism, which includes voices that they don't agree with. So it's incredibly demoralizing. It's incredibly depressing. And for all of your listeners out there, I don't see how it would be safe for an Orthodox Jew to go to Harvard Divinity School when they're so ostracized, when bullying is normalized, when intimidation of Jewish people is promoted. I don't see how Harvard Divinity School can conceivably think of itself as a place where they really respect Orthodox Jewry, because they just don't.
Have they changed? I remember Ari Goldman years ago. He actually wrote a book about being at Harvard Divinity School. I had interviewed. It seems like it's a different school than it is today, at least from what I remember from my conversation with Ari.
Yeah, I read that book, and it's a great book. He was writing maybe the late 80s or early 90s. I don't exactly remember. But yeah, it was a while ago. But point being, yes, things have changed quite considerably. As I said, I'm the only Orthodox Jew there, which initially I thought was quite powerful, and I felt that I could change from the inside and show the beauty of my religious traditions. And I was someone who would involve themselves in the Muslim Student Association events, and I would go to the Jews for Palestine apartheid tashlich ceremonies, not because I supported it, but I wanted them to show that even though I wear a yarmulke, I'm not this misogynistic, insular, afraid of modernity Orthodox Jew that many of them think of as Orthodox Jewry. And there has never been a serious effort on anyone else's part to show the same level of respect that I have shown consistently and considerably to all these other groups. And it's been incredibly frustrating. And as I said in the beginning of this interview, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be filing a lawsuit. I don't want to go to DC. I don't want to talk to the media consistently about anti-Semitism. I just want to go to class. I just want to learn. But it's been such a battle every single day since October 7th to have the most basic senses of respect given to me. And that should not be the case, especially at America's most elite, allegedly elite institution.
Our guest is Shabbos Kestenbaum. Great name. Did your parents give you the name Shabbos?
Yes, I was born on Shabbos, so they figured why not.
Okay. If you were born in Pesach, you would have been Pesach?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Okay, Shabbos Kestenbaum, he's a brave student. He's studying divinity at Harvard. He's battling because he sees firsthand the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred that exists at Harvard. He testified in Washington about that. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. If you'd like to chime in, by the way, call us at 212-769-1925, 212-769-1925. If you have students or no students that go to Harvard or any of the schools where they have anti-Semitism, if you're a student, we'd love to hear from you. 212-769-1925. If you want to email us, zev@talklinenetwork.com is a perfect way to have some of your questions answered. zev@talklinenetwork.com. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's New York Times bestselling author and ghostwriter Michael Levin, and books are my babies. Here's an amazing idea for a gift for a loved one or friend, or perhaps for yourself. A family memoir, a business book, or any other kind of book written and published just for you. My company, Jewish Leaders Books, offers ghostwriting, publishing, marketing, and distribution of books onto Amazon and through Simon & Schuster, distribution into brick-and-mortar Barnes & Noble bookstores and even into airport bookstores. You can get a framed photo of the cover design to give as the perfect gift. To learn more about how Jewish Leaders Books can get your book done for you or for a friend or loved one, contact my friend Zev Brenner at 212-769-1925, extension 100, or drop him an email at zev@talklinenetwork.com. Again, that's 212-769-1925, extension 100, or write to Zev at zev@talklinenetwork.com, and we will get your book going for you.
In a place where tradition meets luxury. The Sleepy Hollow Hotel in Terrytown, newly renovated, featuring its stunning exterior, beautiful rooms, and an inviting lobby, a stunning pool, and a spa, plus a shul and a mikveh right outside. And executive host is Menachem Weinstock. Savor the flavors of Pesach with Chef Shimmy. Fresh food that will delight your senses. Zoo rides, Caribbean arts, concert, Yom Tov show, carnival games, xylophone play. 201-777-0212.
Hi, my name is Beth Chesser, and I am Director of Enrollment Management and Marketing at YU Global. Are you feeling stuck with your employment options? YU Global can help you with laser-focused courses to position you for success and help you advance in your current career, switch careers, or find that first job. YU Global's certificate courses are completely online and asynchronous, allowing learning anytime and anywhere. Our Career Center will provide resources to help you land a dynamic position after course completion. We also can develop courses to help employers upskill their employees to improve productivity. New courses for the spring include Introduction to AI, Project Management, Paralegal Professional Training, The Successful Entrepreneur, Residential Real Estate Investment, and so much more. Visit our full catalog at global.yu.edu. Separate men and women's classes are available. That's global.yu.edu. Your new career starts now.
Hey, this is Dr. Elliot Paradox Kaplan inviting you to my show on Thursday nights, 9:30. And the show is Paradoxical Advice. We talk about different therapies and, to tell you the truth, a new way of looking at doing therapy and approaching couples, families, kids. And it's on WSNR 620 AM and WNEW 102.7 FM HD3. Hope you can make it, and I look forward to seeing you.
Hey, this is Alan Dershowitz. One of the most important Jewish institutions in the world today is Talkline with Zev Brenner. He is so smart, and he is so innovative, and he has so many interesting guests. I don't know what Yiddishkeit, I don't know what New York, I don't know what the world would do without Zev. So Zev, Yasher Koach, may you go from strength to strength and keep informing us and educating us and keep fighting for Jewish values.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981. Please call us with your questions and comments at 212-769-1925. That's 212-769-1925. Or email us at zevbrenner@gmail.com.
Now we're back. Our guest is Shabbos Kestenbaum. He is a brave student. He is the only Orthodox student at Harvard Divinity School fighting anti-Semitism in all different ways. And unfortunately not getting enough support that he should be getting. Just testified recently in Washington on a committee dealing with anti-Semitism. Do you find that walking down campus that people scream at you obscenities, they shout anti-Semitic slurs, aside from the fact that the teachers and faculty have courses where they denigrate Jews and Judaism in Israel? What about just walking around campus? What are you finding? And what are some of your colleagues are finding? We just got to get your microphone back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this is about 2 months ago or so. I was eating lunch at the Science Center with 2 Jewish friends, all of us wearing our kippahs, and we were surrounded by a group of students screaming, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab," which is their new chant that they sing in Arabic. That's also something that they chanted in front of and inside of Widener Library, which is the heart and soul of Harvard University. They are able to chant genocidal chants with total impunity. They've done this repeatedly. There has not been a single condemnation to this day from Harvard University. Forgetting about the fact that none of these protests are sanctioned, they are, as I said, chanting things that genuinely and explicitly call for the genocide of Jewish people. In fact, United States Senator Dan Sullivan was at Harvard And inside Weiner Library, one of these protests were happening, and he was surrounded and physically accosted, and he wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about it. I mean, what an embarrassment on this once great institution that they have totally given into this insane mob that are okay with ethnic genocide against Jewish people, that are okay chanting and interrupting classrooms to yell globalize the Intifada. Just yesterday, one of the students who surrounded me chanting Palestine will be Arab, he writes an op-ed in the Harvard Crimson every other week. And he spoke about the heroic action of the mentally ill United States service member who lit himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. And he was gloating and condoning this act, saying how brave and heroic it was. I mean, I don't think people truly understand, leaving aside the anti-Semitism for a second, I don't think people truly understand how absolutely deranged the next generation of American leaders are. Because rightly or wrongly, Harvard purports, and it's true, to train the next generation of policymakers, of public intellectuals, of faith-based and religious leaders. And the fact that they have so normalized and accepted and promoted absolute insanity, whether it's the promotion of suicide, whether it's the promotion of ethnic genocide, whether it's the promotion that Zionism is racism. If these people are the future of America, then we are in deep, deep trouble. This is really, really scary.
Now, you testified on Capitol Hill. Tell us about that. How did it come about? And do you think that will have any impact on Harvard?
Yeah, so I could start with the second part of that question in terms of if it will have impact. It will have impact if we're consistent about it. That's sort of going to be my theme of the night. If we are consistent in the application of pressure. So in the testimony during the Q&A part, I was asked, what can we do to help? And my immediate answer was subpoena, subpoena, subpoena. Congress and the American people would be horrified to know what's happening behind the scenes. They would be horrified to see these email correspondences coming to light. But the problem is Congress has already subpoenaed Harvard, and their tactic is to just run out the clock. So the first time they were subpoenaed, they waited literally until the 11th hour to give Congress a whole batch of, this was about 4,000 or 5,000 documents that were totally irrelevant to what Congress was asking for. It was publicly available information about Harvard procedures and bureaucracy. And then Harvard subpoenaed them again, and they did more of the same. So they need to be held accountable. If it's not by Congress, then it's in a court of law like the lawsuit we're doing. In terms of how this testimony came about, so the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, which is the same committee that brought those three presidents, Liz McGill, Claudine Gay, and Sally Kornbluh, to testify in December. They said, okay, we heard from the presidents. We see that anti-Semitism is a real issue. Now we want to hear from the students themselves. So they spent about a month or so reaching out to dozens, if not hundreds, of Jewish students across the United States, across college campuses, hearing heartbreaking testimony after heartbreaking testimony. And they had the difficult job of selecting only 9 people, because you could really have this hearing with thousands of Jewish students for days on end. And they selected 9 that represent really a broad spectrum of American college campuses. And, thank God they did more than Harvard has ever done, which is give a platform to Jewish students, which is just hearing us and letting us speak. That was incredibly powerful. And as I said, it's really unfortunate that the only way we can receive any type of justice is by going to Congress and assembling 24 members of the House of Representatives, and by going on Fox News and CNN, and by hoping Bill Ackman retweets us. That's the state of American Jewry on college campuses, that the only way we can get any type of accountability is outside public pressure.
Now, you're a Divinity student. What are you planning to do when you finish Harvard?
So now I very much want to go into public policy, whether that's policy making, whether it's more behind the scenes. The reality is that I have, through personal experience, realized that the only way to create long-lasting and effective change is through the political process. So I've been very blessed to be given a platform, and I want to use that platform to help others, and in particular the Jewish community. I know that my testimony was not the most damning. It was not the most heartbreaking. There are hundreds of Jewish students who have it way, way worse, and many of them have reached out to me and said, I want you to be that voice, and I want you to publicize my story. Even at Harvard, there was a student who reached out to me and said, I want you to know I don't wear my kippah anymore. And I'm not comfortable being in a lawsuit, and I don't want my name to go out there, but I want you, when you're in front of whoever, I want you to tell them that there's a Jewish student in the United States in 2024 at Harvard University who is so uncomfortable and is so scared for his physical safety that he's not going to display his religious identity anymore. And that is a direct result of the moral abdication at Harvard. This should be a national embarrassment. But it's Harvard, so they don't care.
They sweep it under the rug, unfortunately. Yep. So what about, you mentioned that in this testimony, it wasn't just you at Harvard, other schools, other Jewish students testified. What are some of the horrible stories that you've heard from other students, what they're going through being Jewish on campus?
Sure. So I'll say her name just because it's public. So Hannah Schlachter, who's at Berkeley, she spoke about how her friend had her dorm, a Jewish friend had her dorm robbed, and there was a rock thrown through the window with a note that said F Jews. I mean, that is, I usually don't like making these comparisons, but as someone who studies the Holocaust, that's my area of focus, that is straight out of Nazi Germany. And to have that happen in the United States in 2024, it should send shivers down people's spine. We've had, and this is again part of the testimony that students gave, we had testimony of students who said that they've been called baby killers, that they've been called pedophiles. And it has nothing to do with Israel. It has nothing to do with anti-Zionism. It has everything to do with a deep-seated hatred for Jewish people. And sort of to prove my point, the cameras didn't get this and the media didn't really get it, but in the room, and I'll add that the room that we testified in was also the same room where the January 6th and the Benghazi hearings were in. In that room, there were protesters, Code Pink, who are a radical, I mean, they call themselves pro-peace, but they're funded almost exclusively by the Chinese Communist Party, Iran, and Qatar. So these activists came into—
peace-loving nations.
Yeah, exactly. They're known for their unbelievable track record of human rights. So these protesters came into our testimony as we're speaking, and they had fake bloody red paint on their hands, and they were draped in their keffiyehs, and they were staring intensely at us. And I don't know if it was to intimidate us. I don't know if it was for whatever their insidious political purposes were. But about midway through, they all kind of left, because they realized that the testimony that we were giving was not about, yeah, that can be contextualized. That's not really anti-Semitism. That's anti-Zionism. This was blatant, naked Jew hatred. And they realized that it's a bad look for them to be protesting it. So they kind of just left. And I encourage all of your listeners, you can watch the testimony. It's go on YouTube, just Google it, you'll find it. But it's really heartbreaking things. And it's not just Harvard, it's not just Columbia, it's not just MIT, but it's everywhere. And as I said, it was 9 students. It could have been 900 students.
Right. They just only allowed a certain select amount to speak, but they could have had a lot more students who were willing to speak. And I hope are they going to continue having more of these hearings with students, as far as you can tell?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. We also met with the Department of Justice. We met with the Department of Education. We met with the Helsinki Commission. We met with a lot of different governmental agencies who were equally disturbed and genuinely concerned about the safety of Jewish people on campus. And they committed themselves, maybe not holding a roundtable, but to making sure that they were listening to Jewish students and hearing from us directly. I certainly hope that Congress continues to platform Jewish students. I certainly hope that the United States government continues to take the issue seriously. What I found really comforting was the fact that this was a bipartisan committee. This is not an era in Congress where bipartisanship is common. So the fact that it was so clear and so abundant was really, really comforting. And, Elise Stefanik, who, I'll just say I wouldn't have necessarily voted for her 2 years ago. She came up to me right after the testimony and she said, this is my contact info. Let me know what I can be doing to help you. I mean, that's pretty remarkable that you have a policymaker who has so many different priorities saying that I want to make sure that protecting Jewish students is at the top of my list. So real credit
to her to take her up on her help.
Absolutely. Not only her, but Richie Torres, who's actually my personal congressman back in Riverdale, who's a superstar. And if the viewers don't know, you should Google Richie Torres. He's an incredible guy.
He's been on the show. He's been progressive, but so pro-Israel.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. So he's not on the committee. He is not one of the 24 members. Nevertheless, he came for the entire testimony for 2.5 hours. He came and he listened, and he asked me a question. He asked a couple of students questions. He wasn't there for the photo op. He wasn't there for the attention. He was there because he recognized that there is a pandemic of Jew hatred across the country. And he's a Democrat. Elise Stefanik is a Republican. And this is something that they have common ground in. So that's, it's unfortunate that it takes such a 5-alarm fire to get Congress to work together. But nevertheless, the fact that they are working together on this issue is incredibly important. And as Jews, we should show them our appreciation.
Absolutely. People should say thank you. We don't do enough of that. That's unfortunate. Our guest is Shabbos Kestenbaum. He is a brave young man. He's a divinity student at Harvard. He's fighting the Jew hatred, the anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, it's a lonely battle. Doesn't really have enough people supporting him as they should be. And we're hoping that more people get involved, because this is not just unique to Harvard, as we're bringing out. This is, unfortunately, across different college campuses in the United States, where you have Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiments is part of the fabric of university life. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. And if you'd like to chime in, you can email zev@talklinenetwork.com or call us at 212-769-1925.
Take advantage of early bird pricing at Pesach Supreme's Ultimate Hamish Pesach Experience at the Sleepy Hollow Hotel in Tarrytown, close to New York City. Aside from tantalizing Pesach delicacies prepared fresh daily by famous Hamish chef Shimi Zafir, your family will enjoy spectacular Chol HaMoed activities for all ages, including children's rides, kumsitz, and concert. Not to mention an exciting day camp program led by Ari Abramowitz, world-renowned singer Shia Burko, Chazan Chaim Unger, and top-class entertainment led by Gershie Moskowitz, and so much more. Book now during the early bird special and get $500 off per couple room. Call, text, or WhatsApp 201-777-0212 to reserve. That's 201-777-0212.
201-777-0212.
Are you feeling lost in the maze of Medicare? Are all those ads that you see and hear confusing? I'm Medicare Menachem Friedman, and I can help you make the right choice. Over 15 years ago, I helped my grandparents navigate the complex world of Medicare. They were confused, but I brought them clarity, and I can do the same for you. I host countless Medicare educational events, breaking down the ABCs and Ds of Medicare. No jargon, just plain talk. Wondering when to enroll? I can advise you at the proper time to enroll at the right moment so you can avoid penalties and make informed choices. If you're confused about Medicare supplement plans with Part D RX versus Medicare Advantage, I will help you weigh those options. I don't work for Medicare, but work for you. You can change your plan. Fear shouldn't drive your choices. I will empower you to make clear and concise decisions. Say goodbye to that Medicare anxiety. I'll help you find the plan that fits your unique situation. From New York to Florida to California, I'm licensed in over 25 states. Please connect with me, Medicare Menachem Friedman, today. Call 347-738-6846. That's 347-738-6846, or you can find me on the web at mindfulmedicaresolutions.com, because your Medicare journey deserves a trusted companion.
Yochi Brisman presents Chazonis and Classics, an evening benefiting the holy work of Ms. Askim and Yedid, featuring world-class Chazonim Nissim Sal, Mati Boyer, and Zevi Muller, accompanied by a 50-piece symphony orchestra conducted by Ofer Sobel, special feature performance by Yisrael Lamb, and the Philharmonic Experience. All takes place Sunday, March 10th at 7 p.m. at Symphony Space at 2537 Broadway in New York City. MC is Zale Newman, separate seating. For more information and to purchase tickets, call 718-854-4548, 718-854-4548, or log on to chazanas.com. That's CHAZZANUS.com. Don't miss Chazanas and Classics to benefit Ms. Askim and Yedid.
Order in the court! Order in the court!
Did anybody call for a lawyer? Hey, I'm Leah D.
And I'm Zaki Tamir, and we host Let's Lawyer Up.
Zaki, let's tell our listeners the great news.
Hey guys, Let's Lawyer Up is moving to Saturday night. That's right. Saturday night from 10:30 to 11 p.m. right here on WSNR 620 AM.
And WNEW 102.7 FM, HD3. Hey, Zev,
Yes, Lady.
are you ready for Let's Lawyer Up to move to Saturday night?
You bet I am.
So get ready for Let's Lawyer Up. Hey, Zachy, anybody call for a lawyer?
Saturday night, 10:30 right here. Let's lawyer up. Be there.
Please welcome the 110th mayor of the great city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams.
One of my favorite radio shows. Always good speaking with you, Zev. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back just for a little while longer. Shabbos Kestenbaum, he's fighting a fight against anti-Semitism at Harvard and helping other college students as well. He is at the Divinity School at Harvard. Let's take a couple of phone calls. Let's go to Al in Brooklyn. Your question or comment for our guest. Go ahead, Al.
Sure, Tov Shabbos and Zev, thank you for taking the call. Shabbos, thank you very much for the information. I think you're doing an unbelievable job. But here's a general question, general thought that both maybe you and Zev can respond to. I'm somebody who went to school in the 90s. I went to college and law school. And for the most part, I did not find anti-Semitism in the schools at that time. Did I find it in my profession? Occasionally, very subtly, but it was definitely always there. And I'm wondering, if I speak to older, let's say lawyers or doctors, people who went to school, 50s, 60s, 70s, and they'll tell you that certain law schools, certain medical schools, certain law firms, or certain medical facilities would not hire a Jewish student, would not hire a Jewish person coming out of any school. Are we going back to that essentially that maybe we have to go back to the Yeshiva University model or Mount Sinai model, in which we attend schools that are only basically supportive of our religious beliefs and our values?
What you're basically saying, Al, is should Jewish students go to secular universities like Harvard or Yale or Columbia and go to YU because of the atmosphere? And maybe some students are already doing that, but I'll let Shabbos go ahead.
Yeah, I first I'll answer that by just putting out two statistics. One is that Harvard has already seen a 17% drop in early applications. And the other is that Yeshiva University enrollment numbers and applications is at a record number. So is it time for American Jewry to abandon the efforts of modern Orthodoxy and to intellectually assimilate and join these universities? I don't know if I'm comfortable yet making that a distinction. What I will say is we're definitely headed in that direction. If things don't get better and get better quite quickly, then it becomes increasingly difficult to make the argument that you should be sending your kids to environments where they will be physically unsafe. And that's an unfortunate indictment of, as I said, the state of higher education. But I don't see, and I was talking to my high school principal a couple of days ago, and I told him I don't see how it makes sense to invite college recruiters or college admissions representatives into your school building and allowing them to interact with your students, allowing them to interact with your children when the universities that they represent have not issued any plan whatsoever in terms of how they're going to tackle anti-Semitism. So it's an important question. I don't have an answer yet, but as I said, unfortunately, it's something we're going to have to continuously ask ourselves.
Thank you.
By the way, are there lawyers that we can recruit to maybe be helpful to Shabbos?
Well, it's not so much a question of lawyers. The Harvard University, I'm sure, has the biggest law firms on defending them, but that's not the issue. The issue is not whether you will actually get a response from the courts. It's entirely possible that the courts have so been the judges that are being appointed, whether it's current or past, it's entirely possible they just may ignore the entire event unless you get to the appellate divisions, et cetera, et cetera. That will take years. Yeah. As Shabbos has stated, he needs a response now. That's the problem. Unfortunately, a university like Harvard that has an endowment that could, I was talking to somebody a few years ago, they said the Harvard endowment could pay for education of all of their students for the next 10 years, and it wouldn't even put a dent in them. So they don't need their money. The only thing that we can do as a Jewish population is, one, obviously support our Jewish students, support our Jewish groups, support our Jewish families, and seriously think about, do we have to go back to the way it was in the 50s and 60s, where Mount Sinai was created, where UIU was created, where universities that are helpful to us, whether it could be Catholic universities, maybe Boston College would want to take in all Jewish students all of a sudden. Who knows? But there's been traditional universities that have been much more supportive of their Jewish population. And if that's in fact the case, it's time to leave the hierarchy of universities in general. Because if this is going on in the university level, it's guaranteed it's going on in the real world as well. Just a matter of time.
Good point. Good point. Anyway, thank you for a really relevant question. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
No, listen, it's hard out there. Now, have you found, Shabbos, that students have already left Harvard?
I don't know about I know that there's one student who took a semester off. The plan is to come back, at least now. But in terms of people who've left completely, I don't know of any. I do know of two students, or prospective students. I was actually on the phone with them last week, who one got into Harvard Med School, the other got into Harvard undergrad, and they decided they're not going to go, and specifically cited all of the anti-Semitism that's happening at Harvard's campus. So it's already made an effect.
Dowd writes, guest is brave and intelligent, but young and unwise, not thinking in multiple dimensions. Any Democrat who claims they will help are probably lying and will leak all personal info of Jewish persons seeking justice to the enemies of Jewish persons. Make no mistake of this. These people, guests called deranged, I call them satanic. But they're getting paid and financed, sometimes even by DOJ community policing grants.
That's a heavy statement.
Yes.
I don't know about satanic. Look, I'll put it this way. I am not naive that I don't recognize that the progressive left, of which I align myself politically for many, many years, are not the same people that I would want to march with anymore. I understand that completely. But number one, I still have progressive political positions that I believe in. You know, I know this.
What progressive political positions do you believe in?
I know this is going to be unpopular with your viewers, but I do believe that there should be universal health care, for example. I believe that we should have progressive taxation. Now, unfortunately, many of the same people who believe in those two things that I just espoused also are walking anti-Semites. So there's this very fine line. I recognize that politically I'm homeless. You know, I'm not a MAGA Republican. I'm not. At the same time, I am not the progressive leftist that I was pre-October 7th. And that's why I'm so enamored and thankful for people like Richie Torres, who very much is a progressive and also very much is genuine in terms of being a total champion for the state of Israel, for the Jewish people. And if you don't believe me, just Google the things that he's been saying and the things that he's been doing. I'll embarrass him for a second. I mean, not that he's watching, or maybe he is, but he texted me. Actually, he messaged me on Twitter a couple days ago and saying, I was really disturbed by a specific allegation that you gave in your testimony, and what can I do to help? Would writing a letter to Harvard be helpful? Would meeting with my staff be helpful? So this is someone who doesn't just talk the talk, but he walks the walk. And the specific allegation, just because I don't know if I mentioned it, was a current Harvard employee who emailed me out of the blue asking if I would meet him in a secluded underpass to debate whether Jews were involved in 9/11. And then later that day, he posted a video on his social media taunting me with a machete and a picture of my face. And he's still employed by Harvard. So Richie Torres, so I said this in my testimony, and Richie Torres reached out saying this is totally unacceptable and let me know what I need to do to help you. So there are Democrats out there who really are concerned and who really are fighting the good fight. And I would encourage you and all your listeners to show the Hakaras Hatov that we should be giving them in the same way that we would be giving to our.
Now, Richie Torres has been fantastic. Now, my question to you, Shabbos, is if you were applying to a university today, I think you muted your microphone. If you're applying to a university today I think your microphone is muted again.
Oh no, I could hear you.
Okay. So my question to you is, if you were applying to a university today, would you go to Harvard?
Yeah, that's a good question. The short answer is I don't know. The longer, yeah, that's a good question. You know what? I'll leave it at that. I don't know.
Okay, no,
I'm
it's a good answer. It's hard to say. Now, here's the thing, though, and I don't know if this is true of Harvard, but I've heard from other universities, they don't really want Jewish students. In fact, some of the universities have classes on Passover or Jewish holidays, and they won't even give them the students a chance to really make up properly because they're willing to discourage Jewish students from being there. I don't know if that's the case at Harvard, if they accommodate for the holidays, but some universities are giving Jewish students a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a numbers guy, so let's just go down to the numbers. At one point, in its heyday, Harvard was 25% Jewish. Today, in 2024, it's about 4% Jewish. It's not because Jews got dumber over time. It's because there was a deliberate and insidious mandate by Harvard that Jews, for whatever reason, are A, not wanted, and B, don't fall into the category of minorities and affirmative action and the people that we need to cater to. So we've seen just from a numbers perspective that quantitatively Jews are not as represented as they once were. And then in terms of, and we haven't really spoken about it yet, so just briefly, in terms of DEI, which people may have heard a lot about in the media, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, you can go on the Harvard website on diversity, equity, inclusion right now, and you will not find the word Jew mentioned once. I don't even think you'll have the word religion on it, because DEI always meant one thing, and that's catering to specific minority groups that are deemed worthy enough of protection. And Jews have never, ever, ever been part of that conversation. And now I'll give you a good example. When we had Yishai Ribo, the popular Israeli singer, he came to campus 2 weeks ago at the invitation of Harvard Chabad. And Harvard students organized a vicious, vicious protest where they were chanting things like resistance is justified, Palestine will be Arab, globalize the Intifada. And I emailed the Harvard DEI office and I said, aren't you going to condemn the fact that Harvard students have made such an unsafe environment for Jews that we have to hire private armed security to sing Jewish songs? And by the way, the purpose of this concert was to give chizuk to Jewish students who've been dealing with anti-Semitism for months on end. And the response from DEI was, and I quote, "This does not fall under our purview." This is the same DEI that commented on Roe v. Wade, on affirmative action, on Ukraine, on Donald Trump, and all of a sudden, when it comes to Jewish people, oh, we wish we could do something, but this is, not in our control. Do you know how hurtful that is? Do you know how hypocritical that is? Do you know the level of double standards that is? And that is the norm. All these DEI offices, of which at Harvard there's at least 12 of them, none of them are capable of recognizing that Jews can be anything other than a white oppressive class.
Ever consider demonstration in DEI's offices?
Yeah. I mean, look, we, the Jewish people, have been subjected to anti-Semitic demonstrations that go against university policy for months now. We should finally take a page from their book, and we should get as aggressive, and we should get as loud, and we should take over university buildings and say, we're not going anywhere until you commit to doing literally anything about Jew hatred on college campuses. So I'm with you on that.
So let me ask you this question, Shabbos. You alluded to it some of it before. The last few months where you've gone through this and you've seen that your classmates are anti-Jewish and anti-you, and you've been thrown out of WhatsApp groups and having a tough time because you're standing firm, you're proud to be a Jew. How has this changed you religiously, politically? You alluded to it, so I just wanted to get a more succinct answer.
Sure. So I could start with religiously. I was raised an Orthodox Jew, and I never once questioned my Jewish identity. I'm very proud to be wearing a kippah. If anything, I bought a bigger one after October 7th. And that will not change. You know, my mom is very loving and very concerned, and she's repeatedly said, you know, come back home, it's not so safe. And I did have at one point private armed security outside my house for a couple of days when things were pretty bad. but it never.
You talk about at Harvard, you had armed security?
At Harvard, yep. That is.
And you had to provide it yourself, or who provided that service for you?
This is through my legal team. When a current Harvard employee threatened me with a machete and the university did nothing about it, the legal team said, out of concern for your own safety, we're going to be sending security from New York. And they were outside of my house for 3 days. They followed me to Chabad when I went to Davin. That's the state of being Jewish in the United States. So anyways, point being, my mom said, it's not safe, come home. And my attitude has always been and will always be, I will not be penalized for other people's bigotry. And I'm not going to be changing my behavior in order to fit in to what supposedly Western liberal enlightened students demand of me. So if someone's going to attack me or someone's going to verbally abuse me, that's on them. That's not on me. Yeah, it'll hurt. I'll be in pain for a couple of minutes, but I'm not going to change who I am or what I believe in. Politically, it's a different story because, as I said, I always knew that the Democratic Party had an issue of anti-Semitism. And this is someone who registered to vote as a Democrat the day he turned 18. So I'm aware that it's bad. It's probably worse than it ever has been. At the same time, I'm not comfortable jumping ship. I want to reform the progressive party that I love and the progressive party that I believe in. And if that means having a lot of uncomfortable conversations, and if that means angering a lot of people, then so be it. But just because something you love is going through a difficult time doesn't mean you abandon it. It means that you want to fix it and you want to help it. And that's what
You're not abandoning it. They've abandoned you.
Right. There's an argument to be made that they abandoned me. At the same time, the Democratic Party is not going anywhere. Joe Biden can be, and in many cases is, our best ally. And we need to do all we can to show him how important fighting for the state of Israel, fighting for the Jewish people is. And not just saying, well, they're all anti-Semites, now let's all go vote for Donald Trump. I don't think that's a helpful or productive answer.
Shabbos, I think we lost your voice signal.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yes.
I was just saying that I don't think the answer is that we should abandon ship and vote for Donald Trump. I don't think that solves any of our underlying issues.
Now, talk to me about, now you're in the Divinity School, you're the only Orthodox Jew in that school, and you found your university classmates have not been sympathetic, they've been pro-Palestinian. Did that shock you, that you would think religious students would be more morally superior?
As Jonathan Greenblatt said when we met with him on Thursday, he said, be shocked, but don't be surprised. And I thought that was an excellent way of putting it. I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised, because this is the stereotypical progressive illiberal student who is so open-minded that there's nothing actually in their mind anymore. It is total heresy to say anything other than Israel is a genocidal apartheid regime that is hell-bent on killing any Gazan that moves. It is heresy to disagree with that. And being at Harvard Divinity School, especially since October 7th, has been really, really difficult. I mean, I don't want to sound like a victim and I don't want to sound like a child, but I've been bullied. I mean, like kindergarten bullying. And what makes it the most difficult is that the people that are in place to help, like DEI, like the president, they just don't. And that to me has been the worst experience. It's not that there have been anti-Semites at Harvard, because we all kind of knew that. The most damning part has been that those in power who are meant to protect haven't. And that's been really difficult to navigate. And as I said, this is not about me. It's not about my struggle and my experience. It's about so many other people who've been going through the same thing.
Do we have any idea how many Orthodox Jewish students are at Harvard?
Difficult for me to quantify. I'll put it this way. We have a minyan at the Harvard Hillel, and we have a sort of daily minyan at the Harvard Chabad. At least 200, probably more, but it's sizable enough.
Now, kosher food, there are different schools. So you say the Divinity School does not have kosher food. What about the other schools at Harvard?
Right. So let me just point out the hypocrisy. The Harvard Business School, for example, I don't believe they have kosher food, But that kind of makes sense because that's not their ethos. They've never gone out of their way to say that we are a religiously tolerant place, that we're going to make sure that there's halal and kosher and vegan. It's the business school. The Divinity School, which is all about creating spaces of religious pluralism. For them not to have kosher food is so profoundly bizarre, hypocritical, ignorant. So that's why I'm making a big deal about it. Okay, if it was the business school, I get it. Ironically, the law school does have kosher food. So your son-in-law eats well every day. It's expensive, but it's there. But the Divinity School, which again is the only school at Harvard that is all about promoting diversity and inclusion, is also the only one that actively discludes Orthodox Jews.
Do they have halal food?
They have halal food for student
They have
events.
halal food, but not kosher food?
For student events. I don't know if they have halal food in the cafeteria. It could be they do, but they definitely do for student events.
And for
Also,
student events,
the
do they have
Muslim-
kosher food at the Jewish events?
No, there was actually, it was a funny story where there was one student event where they did have like a kosher table in the corner, and the food just wasn't kosher. It was like meat. And I told them, like, this is really, I don't know where you got this from, but I'm telling you it's not kosher. And I'm not going to say the restaurant's name, but they emailed me, this is the restaurant we got it from, and it's kosher, and you should tell your fellow kosher observant Jews at Harvard that they have another restaurant in Cambridge that they can eat at. And I'm like, guys, don't Jew-splain to me what's kosher or not, because this just isn't. So that was a funny anecdote.
Wow. So this is something which you have to deal with on a daily basis. You want to do your studies, and you have to deal with it. Yes, go ahead. You want to say, Shabbos?
I was just going to sort of conclude by saying it's not just about me. And yes, I have alarming incidents that we could spend a whole nother hour talking about that have happened to me, but it's not about me. It's about the dozens, if not hundreds of other students at Harvard alone who've been going through a really difficult time. And then it's also about the hundreds and thousands of Jews across college campuses who've also been navigating this really challenging period.
No, I think you're brave. I know you're going through quite a bit. It's not easy, and you want to study, and you have to deal with anti-Semites and lawsuits and testimony and testifying, etc. So, do you have other students on Harvard, by the way, who are working with you?
It depends how you define working with me. Look, there are 5 other plaintiffs on this lawsuit. I know them. They're great. I wish, and hopefully they are watching, I wish that they would also put their names on it. That'll definitely alleviate some of the pressure. But I will be honest, people have not been happy with the direction I've taken it in. My attitude, especially in the last month, where I've been so
happy with it? Who's not happy? Why aren't they happy with what you're doing?
So they feel that the best way to create change is working within the system. And I think they were right in the beginning, but it's so increasingly clear that there's no more working with, because they are either unable or unwilling to do what needs to be done. The only way, in my opinion, to gain meaningful action is by going to Congress, by filing lawsuits, by getting media to cover this. And yeah, a lot of Jews have told me that they basically, look, we get what you're doing, and we're sorry you're going through it, but consistently publicizing all of this creates a really bad picture. We just want to study. We don't want to be hounded by journalists every day asking if we feel safe. And I can sympathize with that. And I'm sorry that they're going through that. But that's not because of my activism, and that's not because of what I'm doing. That's because there really is a 5-alarm fire at Harvard, and there really are anti-Semites. So you shouldn't be mad at me for calling them out. You should be mad at the anti-Semites for making me call them out. So it has created some divisions in the Jewish community, and I can respect it. But ultimately, so long as there is a fight that needs to be fought, I will be fighting it. And my biggest gripe at the moment is the Anti-Semitism Task Force, and I'm not going to shut up about it. I want to expose how useless they are. I want to expose how they are allowing Harvard to get away with anti-Semitism. And I'm not going to call out anyone by name, and I know some of the people on the task force, and I respect them, and I get why they're there. But I need people to realize that this creates a very dangerous precedent, that we can tolerate anti-Semitism so long as we pretend that we're doing something about it. And that's what this task force is.
Shabbos Kestenbaum, I want to thank you for standing up for really, I think it's important. I think this has to be exposed, sunlight, lawsuits, speaking out, Congress. These are all important things. I'm hoping that we might even be doing a broadcast from Harvard. We're talking about that. So
that'd be great. You might need some security though. So
okay, you'll have to give us some guidance on who to use, or maybe. But you know something, I think it's important, and we're talking about it. We're hoping to be there for a Shabbos and maybe doing a broadcast. So that's something we're looking to right now. But I want to thank you for all that you're doing, for standing up, for speaking out. It's so important. So God should give you the strength to continue. And we got to fight the anti-Semites. They've always been around, but the thing now is they're not afraid to be anti-Semitic. They're emboldened, and I'm glad that you're speaking out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and looking forward to welcoming you on campus.
Thank you. Shabbos Kestenbaum, doing the good fight, fighting against anti-Semitism and naked Jew hatred at Harvard and other universities.